joins us along with Florian Altschiller. She's still with us from last hour. Florian, thank you for holding on. Philip, welcome. The case of James Addy in Missouri. What was your take on the jury's verdict there? It took them about 3 hours, a little less than 3 hours, to come up with guilty verdicts. Your take?
Oh, it was absolutely the right result. And personally speaking, I have a feeling they had a verdict in less than an hour, and they probably just spent the last couple of hours trying to figure out how to fill out the verdict forms, chit-chatting with each other to give the illusion that they gave some meaningful thought to all the evidence. But it was very, very compelling circumstantial evidence, very compelling. To me, one of the worst pieces of evidence that nobody really talked about that much were those two snitches, those two jailhouse informants. They both testified that Mr. Addy said that he put the girl face down in the mud. And it was just a little too coincidental. There was nothing in it for those men. Other than maybe just a little field trip away from the jail to get out of the building to come to court to testify. It was just a little too coincidental that two people were able to give that testimony. The other really terrible, horrible piece of evidence that was impenetrable was that darn T-shirt. The daughter's T-shirt that she gave her father was probably the only one in the galaxy, and to be found right near the scene can only be connected to him. And truthfully, I don't even think they needed the track evidence. I don't even know why they bothered. They had plenty without it. Tire track evidence is so fallible. It's subject to subjective interpretations. While it is generally accepted in the scientific community, it is very, very subject to attack. But ironically, the defense did not bring in their own tire track evidence to refute it, probably because they couldn't. They may have consulted with a couple of experts who concurred in with the opinion of the state's experts. So they were stuck. They were stuck with what they had.
Stuck attacking the science. Florina, good or bad, it is something, though, you can have for the jury, that tire track evidence, because if you didn't have it, the defense would be saying there's no physical evidence at all, not one bit, right at the scene, because the T-shirt was a little bit away from the scene. What was your take on the tire track evidence? Was it something that should have been brought in? Philip says they should have left it out.
Well, there's no reason to leave anything that helps the prosecution out. I think really the question is, did the jury need that extra evidence to convict? There was plenty, but there's no reason to keep evidence that helps the prosecution out unless the defense argues to keep it out and is successful. As a prosecutor, I would absolutely use all of the evidence that I have, so long as it supports my overall theory of the case. And here, the tire tracks match based on expert analysis, and in matching, they support my theory of the case. So I would absolutely put it in front of the jury. More evidence doesn't hurt.
Did you agree with Philip on the snitches? Were they effective? The two individuals that came in that said basically the same thing. And to Philip's point, what are the odds of them hearing the same thing? And Addy had a little too much detail, if in fact that's what he said.
Sure. The substance of what the snitches said is great, but snitch testimony is often compromised. They're often told that they will get, good faith dealing. Maybe they'll be moved to a facility that's better. Maybe they'll have some time off of what they're actually serving. Snitch testimony often comes with this air of bias, and I don't personally put a lot of weight on snitch testimony. However, based on the level of detail and based on the consistency between the two snitches' stories, that's where I would put the weight. And I thought that was compelling.
Yeah. What about, Philip, was there an opportunity here for second-degree murder from the defense, either bringing on their client or maybe arguing the law a little bit more in the close? They seemed to be going for broke with asking for a not guilty, when in reality, to your point, just brick after brick after brick, and with the T-shirt, I mean, there was just so much there.
Well, I think the only hope that they could have had for a lesser included offense maybe would have been a manslaughter had he testified. So, for example, had he taken the stand and said, they drove out to a remote area to talk, he didn't want to be near his wife or his kid to hear anything. And when he broke it off with her, she lost it and became unhinged, and they got into a physical altercation. He didn't know what to do. And then he pulled his gun out and shot her. The problem with that, though, is that she was shot in the back of the head. So clearly she was taken unawares. She had no idea what was going on. And she also drove out there, if memory serves me correctly, in her pajamas. So this was the ultimate planned, premeditated, plotted killing. I don't see how you can get away from a first-degree premeditated murder on these facts anyway.
Yeah, and the fact that the gun was actually pressed up against her head, Florina. There is that, and that was a great moment when the prosecutor argued, yeah, it's premeditation because you can't physically press a gun barrel against somebody's head without pausing for an instant before you pull that trigger. The barrel was on her head, pressed up before the trigger was pulled. I thought the state did a great job. What were your thoughts on the way they were able to assemble and story tell?
Well, the state was handed a set of facts that was very favorable to the prosecution. It's easy to put on a good case when the facts are in your favor and the law is in your favor. You're working with great evidence and it all just comes together. So the defense has a very difficult job of trying to dismantle those facts without having any witnesses that could raise question marks and without a compelling defendant who can testify on his own behalf. So you have basically, they were handed a gift wrapped up in a bow and just had to present that to the jury. I really didn't see any hiccups in their case. It was beautiful.
Yeah, and to your point earlier when we were discussing this, so you wonder why there wasn't a plea deal in this one. We're going to step aside, take a break. After we come back, we're going to hear from the family members of the victim and the defendant. Stay with us. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.
Newsy cuts through.